Hey, welcome back to the episode. Don't pay any attention to me. I'm just over here, just hanging out in the shadows, watching, waiting for the right time. I'm just creeping around. Hey, listen, guys, welcome back to the show. We're doing a little bit of creeping. I'm hanging out. I'm hanging out in the shadows, but what we're really talking about today is scope creep. Right. We're going to be talking about something that affects pretty much every contractor in every trade. If you deal with a customer, you almost inevitably will have scope creep. And so we're going to dive into that. We're going to talk about what is it, how does it happen, and how to prevent it from happening, right? So hang out. It's going to be a good episode. I know a lot of you deal with this, so let's jump right into it. So what is scope creep? Now, some of you already know what this is. Some of you may have heard this term. It may be something, you may call it something different, but scope creep is basically whenever you sell a job and you start the project, throughout the project, the length of the project, more things are added to do, more work needs to be done. Right? The scope of the work changes at some point throughout the project. And there's lots of different reasons why that happens, which we're going to unpack. But basically, scope creep usually ends up in you doing more work for no extra money. Or sometimes if you do it right, you're going to have change orders. But a lot of times scope creep comes in and you don't really even know it. Your team out in the field that you're not there supervising is doing scope creep and the customer's taking advantage of it. There's lots of different reasons, but it basically at the end of the day, it costs us money in production time. In other words, it makes the project go longer. We may even buy materials to complete this at our cost that we eat. And it's just not good. I mean, period. It ends up being a loss on your books for the project. It hurts your profit margins, right? Scope creep happens way, way more than what you may think happens. And so if we look into how does it happen, there's several different factors of how this happens. One is proper expectations were not set in the beginning. I just saw a post this morning in a Facebook group for a landscaper was doing a project, and he basically said, I only have 3 guys. This project's, we're already 3 weeks into it. We're not even halfway. And the customer is already upset because it says we're taking too long. But what happened was the contractor never even set a timeline or schedule for the project. And so if the client's thinking, if they think they're hiring a company that has 15 employees and they're going to be able to get this done in 2 weeks, right? And maybe they have a party coming up in a month and they're thinking 2 weeks is plenty of time. You're going to be 2 weeks. I'm giving you 2-week buffer. That way we can get this project done before before the party, at the fault of the contractor or the fault of the customer. None of it's discussed. And then you're 3 weeks into the project and I'm starting to get worried because I have a party coming up. I never told you this, but it's just something I thought I could figure on my own. And then you're telling me you got another 3 weeks. I'm upset. You're ruining my party, essentially, right? That is not the customer's fault. That is your fault as the contractor for not setting and understanding expectations of your clients. Right? Now, that's not necessarily a scope creep problem, but that's just an example of setting expectations. So you also set expectations with your scope of work with your clients before you begin, right? So you have to set proper expectations. And I'll get into some examples when we talk about how to prevent it. But I have a new client who just joined the Profit Club, and I'm working with him, and he sent over one of his estimates for me to take a look at. And I just noticed that his scope of work in his estimate is very vague, and it's something that will come back and bite you in the butt. So I'll talk more about that here in a minute. The next thing that happens other than expectations is problems on the job. That's pretty explanatory, right? You open a wall up, there's termite damage. Now you have to do a change order. Well, typically your change order should cover any form of scope change, right? You should get paid for that. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. If you have an unknown, you open the wall, it's going to take you an extra day and $500 in materials and $300 in labor or whatever. Like your change order covers that. So you're not necessarily losing money on that. But what happens a lot of times is you open a wall up and you didn't plan on, one 2x4 being broken half and it needs to be replaced. It's just one 2x4. You got extras in the trailer and it's only going to take you 15 minutes to replace it. Well, you don't go to the client and be like, hey, we got to replace one 2x4. It's going to cost you, $34. Let's do a change order for it, and you got to pay me $34. You're just like, just take care of it. We'll just take care of it, right? Now that may be a basic example, but it can scale. Right. And a lot of times we just eat that because it's like, it's not worth it to go and bother the client and hold the job up for 2 hours over a, one 2x4. We'll just take care of it. That stuff happens all the time. And that's also why it's important to have buffers in your estimating. One thing that we do with this is just factor in those things into the estimate. And I'll dive more into that here in the future as well. But problems on the job is another reason it happens. The next three things are really what gets most contractors on scope creep. The first of those is indecisive clients, right? Clients just don't know what they want. You're talking to them and, they say, well, we think we want to have, we're just going to have a single vanity light over the vanity. Well, then in the middle of the project, after the electrician has come, they decide they want to have two vanity lights instead of one single one. And now you have to run rough end the box over to the other side, move the other box. And again, you get some scope creep. Now you should be covering that with a change order, but indecisiveness is what I'm talking about, where the client is actually, because they can't decide what they want, it's causing delays in the job. It's causing things to be changed after the fact, right? So you have a lot of indecision that causes a lot of, scope creep. Also, scope applies to everything. So it can be scheduling. If you have a client who is micromanaging you and who wants to have information, and every single day they want a 30-minute, breakdown of what's going to happen that day, that scope, that amount of time you spent talking to them that you didn't plan for, is going to creep onto your schedule. It may not creep into your materials or the actual labor that's being done, but it can creep into your supervision and schedule. So if you only planned on 5 hours of supervision on this project, and all of a sudden your supervisor is there for 15 hours, that's scope creep, right? And you can't, it's difficult, shouldn't say you can't, it's very difficult to go to a client and say, hey, I didn't know you were going to talk to me so much, so I really need to charge you more for talking to me. It's difficult to do that, like very difficult. Some people would say unprofessional. Others would say that it's just included. It's part of it. But the point is like, those are things that can happen with, if you don't do a very good job of pre-qualifying your clients in the first place and understanding who they are, looking for red flags, but that stuff can creep into your scheduling. So indecisive clients. The next one is clients wanting freebies. Now, this is the most common type of scope creep. Hey, while you're here, would you do me a favor? Sweet old 70-year-old Alice, you're remodeling her bathroom. And she's like, Brad, while you're here, would you do me a favor and just hang this curtain on this one window? I just can't get up there. And, I just need to put it back up. It's only going to take you 10 minutes. And you're like, okay, sure, Alice, you're so sweet. You made us cookies. So, we'll go and do this for you. It's a 10-minute job. No big deal. Well, but that happens like 8 more times throughout the project. Hey, while you're here, can you do that? While you're here, can you do this? While you're here, would you mind doing this? Right. And so now that's where scope creep comes in. It's the clients wanting the freebies. Now, this is not necessarily a sign of a bad client. This can be an uneducated client. It can be a new client in terms of, ever having work done and doesn't understand how it works, right? You got to remember, customers and clients don't go to customer school. Your customers don't go to customer school in order to know how to be a customer. If they've worked with 5 other contractors in the past and all 5 of those do certain things a certain way, but you do something completely different than those other 5, their expectation is that you're going to be the same as the other 5. So you have to educate your clients why you're doing something different and why it may be better, what they should expect from it. This idea that clients just know what's going to happen, they're just going to give you a blank check and move out of their house for a month and let you do whatever you want with no accountability is absolutely absurd, right? You're working with people, so you have to know that they don't go to school, so you may have to educate them. So you have clients that want freebies because they don't know any better. They think, I'm paying for you to be in my house working. I'm already paying for you to be here. What's another 10 minutes? You're making good money off of me. What's another 10 minutes? That leads into the other type of client, which is once they've kind of, maybe they hired you, you were the most expensive, or your price was over their budget, but they really wanted to work with you. They feel a little jaded about it because they feel like they overpaid, right? So in their mind, they're going to get their money's worth. One of my clients is dealing with a client like this right now. There were some red flags that were somewhat ignored, but thought was controlled, come back to bite them later in the butt, right? Where the client's like, I paid this much money, I expect this. And so they're creating a demand of scope creep, right? There's a situation where if you're working upstairs, here's an example. If you're working upstairs in a bathroom, and there's a basement directly below the bathroom you're working in, and maybe there's a weight room or a laundry room or an office or something below that. And as you're upstairs working and you're banging and doing different things, there can be debris, dust, whatever from the ceiling joist, from the floor above is coming down onto the items in the lower room. Well, if it's a room that's used on a daily basis, right, or in the evening or whatever, you may have planned on putting plastic down over everything, and then at the end of the project, removing the plastic, right? And then throwing it away. Their plan was they have to use that space every day. They thought you were going to put plastic down every day, and at the end of each day, you were going to pick up the plastic and throw it away. That way they could use that room in the evening. This was never discussed in the pre-planning. This was never discussed in the sales, right? All of a sudden, you just had incurred a cost of having to buy plastic, more plastic to cover every single day of a 6-week project. They're frustrated because they didn't even know that you were going to have to put plastic down there, and they need to use that room. Now you have a situation where, if it's an home office, the guy works from home, he's directly below it. You can't kick him out of his office for 6 weeks. Now what are you going to do? Now he's got to set up a temporary office somewhere else, and you feel bad. So you help him move. Like, this stuff can go on and on and on and on forever. This is why it's so important to make sure when you're talking to people, you are talking through every aspect of the whole job. When you go to their house, right, and you're looking over the job during the estimating process or the on-site consultation, as we call it, and even whenever you go to, collect the deposit and kind of sign the contracts and start the job, there should be a walkthrough. There should be an expectation that you set. And this is where you go and like, okay, just so you know, when we're working, there's going to be dust more than likely coming down in the basement. You go down and look, oh, it's a guy's office. Oh, do you work from home? Yeah, I work from home. Oh, that changes the dynamic of everything. Are you going to be working? Yeah. There's going to be dust. We're going to have to figure something out here. Right? If you do that in the beginning and you know that you're going to have to put plastic down at the end of each day or at the beginning of the day and take it up at the end of each day, then you have to add, 2 more boxes of plastic, which is going to cost you $60. And then, an extra 10 to 15 to 20 minutes of man hours every single day, putting it down and taking it up. That's going to cost you a few $100s. It may only end up being $250 more in total work that's being done. But it's just one thing. When you're doing remodeling or any kind of big project, there could be 50 of these. There could be dozens of these, and it all creeps up. That's why it's called scope creep, right? It creeps up on you. It's not scope massive change. If I come in day one and the client's like, hey, instead of remodeling our bathroom, we actually want you to remodel our entire kitchen, right? Like that would be obvious and be like, hold on, this doesn't work. We got to change something. That's not what happens. It's these little bitty things that just creep up on you over the course of a project, specifically longer projects. And then you get done and you realize that you ate $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 worth of stuff. That's how it happens. So clients wanting freebies, clients who feel like they paid too much and they're trying to get their money's worth out of you. And the last and the most prevailing way that this happens is contractors who are people pleasers, and they believe their job as a contractor is to make their clients happy. This is a deadly combination, okay? Your job is not to make your clients happy. I don't care what anybody says. Your job is not to make people happy. You cannot make someone happy. You can't, because it's their emotions that determine if they're happy or not. and you have no control over someone's emotions. Now, you can manipulate somebody. You can easily make someone mad, right? You can lie to somebody in a short-term gain to get them to like you. Eventually, all that stuff comes out. Your job is not to make people happy. Your job is to provide a quality experience and product. And the end result of that is that your client feels like they got their money's worth, or they were more beneficial in the exchange, right? Kind of under promise, over deliver, if you will. You charge them $20,000, they feel like they got a $30,000 experience. They're happy with that. But this whole, hey, while you're here, John, would you mind, replacing this toilet? It's broken and, shouldn't take you but 10 minutes. Okay, yeah. I definitely want you to be happy. So while I'm here, it won't take no time. I'll go ahead and do that for you. No problem, right? You want them to be happy. The people pleaser aspect. That's another reason why scope creep happens. Okay. Now let's look at, ways that we can prevent scope creep from happening. And I talked kind of a little bit about a few of them. The first thing that you have to do in the sales process, specifically during the estimate, is you have to have a very detailed scope of work, a very detailed scope of work. Now, when I say that, sometimes people think that means like break out every, 10 2x4s, provide and install 10 2x4s, one box of screws, provide and use one box of screws. Like they think detailed means break out every single thing into its own line item. That's not what detailed scope of work means. Detailed scope of work means this is what we're doing, and these are the specific parameters of what you're getting. So what I do, what I did with my estimates in like a bathroom model, at the very beginning of the estimate, it had a detailed scope of work. It didn't say detailed, it just had scope of work, right? And then it may have like dash master bathroom remodel. And then it would basically say, our company would provide, or, what did I say? What was the exact words? This estimate, I just completely forgot what my actual, the verbiage of what I said on there. But basically, I'm paraphrasing now. It's like, we agree to provide so-and-so with, the following scope of work. Complete master bathroom remodel, which includes removing all trim, all appliances, all, fixtures, drywall down to the studs, complete, remove all nails and screws from the studs, align, straighten up or plumb or, whatever framing needs to be done, and, provide a finished surface, replace all the drywall with new drywall. I'm obviously making stuff up here because this is a fictitious example, but it's like detailed. The first thing we would always do is like put down protection. So, and I kind of forgot that, like we will provide and install runners on the carpet and plastic up in the walls, in the master bedroom to prevent dust from encroaching into the into the bedroom. It's like very detailed. We're going to put down runners. We're going to put up plastic. We're going to have negative air pressure machines. We're going to take down all of the drywall, remove all of the trim, remove the vanities, the toilet, the shower, the tub, all of the fixtures, the lights, the ceiling. We're going to move all the drywall down to the studs. We're going to clean and prepare all studs for new drywall. We're going to do, all new plumbing from the floor, from the subfloor up. We're going to replace all the electrical. It's like, it's very detailed, and it's also putting limits on what you're doing. If you said in your estimate, this estimate includes replacing all of the plumbing, and that's all you put, well, that could mean the entire house. Oh, you're going to replace all the plumbing in the whole house? That's great.
Brad, that's stupid. They know it's in the master bathroom.
No, they don't. They don't know it's in the master bathroom. You're making an assumption. That's common sense. I don't care if it's common sense. It's not common experience. What you've done is you've created a loophole for a liability point for them to come and sue you. And this is something I'm talking about with my client that I was sharing with you earlier. If you say, the client that I was telling you earlier that's new, if you say he had he's doing a room addition, and he had a line item for excavating, right? Excavation work, which included digging the footers, site work, backfill, stuff like that. His line item description is said something to the effect of prepare grade site for drainage, something like that. I can't remember the exact words, but it basically said like dig footers, excavation, dig footers. This is the scope of work, dig footers, something like backfill or something. And then the one that I saw was grade, provide grade for drainage, comma, and then etc. etc. And I said, bro, this is not good. Well, let's say I own a 2-acre lot and you're doing a room addition and you say grade elevation for drainage. I mean, if I was an evil person, I could take you to court and said, yeah, it says grade elevation for drainage. I assumed that was going to be for the entire 2 acres. In your mind, you're thinking like 2 feet away from the new, bring in some backfill and grade out 2 feet away from the room addition and grade it. But it doesn't say that in your scope. So I can take advantage of that if I wanted to. Now, most people aren't going to do this, but it can happen, right? But here's the thing. Even if I'm not an evil customer, I don't know what that means. What does grade elevation for drainage mean? Does that mean you're going to bring in, I'm going to have a 3-foot mound around my house? Does that mean that I got to sow grass? We're going to bring in dirt. Now I got to get some grass, get a landscaper out to sow grass. Like, what does that mean? Right? I have questions. So that single line item now has left you open for a liability, but it also raises more questions. Hey, just a quick time out from the show. If you're a frustrated contractor who's dealing with low profit margins, stuck working on the tools every day, or doing free estimates for people who are never going to hire you in the first place, I invite you to my private contractor community, the Profit Club, where contractors just like you are adding 2 to 3 times more profit each year without producing any more jobs and finally getting completely off the tools to never do another free estimate again. So if you're ready to increase your profits, stop doing free estimates and get off the tools, then all you have to do is click the link in the show notes to learn more about the Profit Club and see how it can easily 2 to 3 times the cash in your pocket, give you a proven sales process that will convert more jobs with ease and get you off the tools once and for all. And the best part is you can do all of this without having to produce more jobs than you currently are. Click the link to learn more. Now let's get back to the show. You don't want a customer to read your estimate and have questions about it at the end, specifically around scope. I'm not saying they won't have any questions, but if they have any questions about the scope of what you're doing, what's actually included in what you're doing, you're not giving a detailed enough scope of work. Okay. And this is where scope creep can come in during the project. You're towards the end of the project, you're doing backfill and you're doing the grade, and you grade it out 2 feet around the room addition. And it's because of the nature of it, it's got a little bit of an extra slope, right? Maybe the terrain is a little off or whatever. And the client comes home at the end of the day and is like, hey, are you done out here? And you're like, yeah, that's it. That's what we had in the estimate. Well, I have a problem with this because this doesn't match the rest of our landscaping. Like it sticks out like a sore thumb. Like the way this was done, it doesn't flow right. Like aesthetically, it looks bad. And you're like, well, that's, it's in the estimate. I put it right in the estimate. Hold on.
I put it right in the estimate. You read it. You signed off on it. That's your fault.
No, it's not the client's fault. It's your fault as the contractor because you did not give detailed scope and make sure they understood what's happening. Okay. Most of you guys are way under, you're shortcutting your estimates. You just are. And I get it. Doing estimates is one of the most tedious and time consuming things you can possibly do. Highly encourage you to use templates. You use software. I don't care which one you use. Next week, I got a guest on who has a software specifically to help you with this. I'm not necessarily endorsing them fully. I'm not saying there's the end all be all. I'm just saying use software and templates to shortcut this process for you. This is not an excuse. Like, I don't have enough time is not an excuse when you're doing estimates. specifically when it comes to scope. So the way you prevent scope creep is you have to have a detailed scope of work. You have to, okay? I even told my client, I was like, dude, you gotta really get more detailed. And what's up with this, etc.? It literally said, etc., comma, etc. What does that even mean? What's etc.? You're going to come put a pull in for me? You're going to bring in, 20 loads of dirt and plane out the low spot in my backyard? Like, what does that mean? What's etc. mean? Right? You can't do that. The next thing is how to prevent scope creep is you have to look at the red flags when you're talking to clients. Again, last week I talked about the old versus new sales process. When you truly understand how to effectively communicate with clients, which is what we teach in the profit sales system, we call it sales, but really it's communication. I'll just be straight with you. It's communication that it works across all avenues of your life and business. It just works really good in sales. Okay. So when you learn how to effectively communicate, and specifically in the sales process, you learn how to start listening for cues. You learn to start hearing specific words and phrases and word tracks that certain types of personality traits and clients use. When you identify, oh, this is a C personality, right? This is a conscientious person who is going to want to know a lot of details, a lot of facts. They want to know the numbers. Think accountant, think engineering, people that want all of the information. When they start using certain phrases and you pick up on that, now you know, okay, this client is going to require a little extra hand holding because they are a C personality and they want all of the details. I'm going to have to send them a text or email or a phone call probably at the end of each day and let them know where we're at because they want to know all the details. I need to add that into my time, right? Or I'm going to have to spend a lot more time with my numbers and my invoices and my estimate because they're going to want to see more detail. I can't just say scope of work, remodel master bathroom, right? Like that's what your scope of work is. Remodel master bathroom. Install landscape pavers in the backyard. Replace roof. That's your scope of work. That's not even acceptable. But specifically, when you have a C personality, they're going to want even more detail. So I got to factor into my time. One, my estimate's going to take a little bit longer because I got to add more detail. Two, the project's going to add a little bit more supervision and time because he's going to have more information and want more details. Come home, want to talk to the guys while they're working. Like I'm going to factor that in to my overall cost because I know how to effectively communicate and I know what to listen for, right? I start to see behavioral patterns. I start to see language patterns. When I talk to people and they say, I'm really good at sales, and they don't even know that there's 4 different types of personality profiles, I instantly know that you're not good at sales, right? When you don't know that people speak in different language, and I don't mean like Spanish, English, French. I mean, they speak in different language based on their people class, their social class, their religion, their race, right? Ethnicity. People speak differently. And if you don't understand and you just assume that everyone means and wants and thinks the same thing, and you say something, you can offend somebody without even knowing it. So when it comes to scope and you're talking to a client, and they're using specific words and specific word tracks, those things should go off like a red flag. If they say something like, you say, what are you guys thinking about in regards to, what type of countertops you want in the kitchen? You want solid surface? You want, quartz, granites, formica? What do you want? Laminate? Like, what are you thinking? And they say something like, well, we don't really know for sure yet, but we'll definitely have it figured out. We'll figure it out later. Like if somebody says something like that, that is a clear sign that they're very indecisive. Red flags, hair on my neck standing up, spidey senses going off. Okay, that's, mental notes. They don't know what they want. What about what kind of, flooring are you wanting to put in there? Well, we don't really know that either. We're thinking tile, but, we're open to anything. Okay. Red flag number 2. Okay, well, what about the style of cabinets? Do you guys know you want something more modern? You want it to be more, traditional, contemporary? Like, what's your thoughts of the overall style of the cabinets? Well, we like all of them. We like all the different ones. We can't really decide which one we like the most, but we know we have to make a decision eventually, right? Like this is trending down the road of dealing with an indecisive customer. If you don't think indecisive customers will cause scope creep, then you haven't been in business long enough, because indecisive customers will kill any productivity you have. They will frustrate the hell out of you, right? When you're dealing with indecisive customers, you have to have basically like a drop dead point of like, hey, we have to have all of our decisions, all of our selections made by this date, or we cannot move forward with your project. And you're going to have to force their hand a little bit, and then also understand that halfway through the project, they're going to change their mind because they felt like you forced them to make a decision they weren't ready to make yet, and they're going to want to change it later on. And this is where you really have to have a tough conversation and setting expectations from the get-go of, listen, we charge for change orders. If you said you want a quartz countertop and I provide you an estimate for a quartz countertop, and 2 weeks before we need to put it in, you change your mind and you want granite, that's a change order. It may slow down the project depending on the countertop, supplier, what their schedule is and their availability and their resources, because now they got to go pick it out. They got to make a different selection, right? And so you charge a change order and you charge a fee for the change order, not just the cost of the change order. You charge a fee like $100 or $200 or $50 fee that simply says, hey, if you change your mind mid-project, you're going to be assessed a $100 fee just for doing the change order plus the cost of the change order. The goal of that is to persuade them to make up their mind quicker than later. It truly is to penalize them, right? You want people to make up their mind as soon as they can in the process. Sometimes things change. It's just how it is. But you can mitigate the amount of changes that have to be made, right? So you have to look out for red flags with specific types of clients, okay? I already covered the charging a fee. If you charge a fee for change orders, it really kind of forces them to make sure that they decide what they want. And the last thing, when someone is looking for additional work to be done, right? And instead of being the people pleaser contractor, Tim comes to you in the middle of a project. Hey, Brad, I know we talked about it whenever we did the estimate, and we talked about replacing the front door, along with the kitchen remodel. And, originally we told you we didn't want to do it, but we've changed our mind and, we want to do it now. Okay, perfect. We can do it. Just so you know, here's the fee. It's going to increase the timeline. We may not even be able to do it right now because of things that are scheduled. We can't add stuff, whatever. Right. And that may have been a bad example for what I'm actually trying to say. But regardless of you have to, if somebody says they want to add a week's worth of work in the middle of a project and you have another job lined up, you can't always just push everybody off and add a week's worth of work. You may have to come back and do that. And it's going to cost more because you have to mobilize, right? Those things have to be discussed. But what I was trying to get to with is being direct, is if you're working and an old, sweet Alice comes and says, hey, while you're here, can you replace my toilet for me? I bought it at Lowe's. It just needs to be installed. You go, yeah, absolutely. Let me get you a price on that. Instantly. Absolutely. Let me work up a price for you. Yeah, I'd love to do that for you. Let me, it's going to be $300 or whatever, if you know what the price is. Hey, can you replace this toilet for me? Yeah, Alice, absolutely. We can do that tomorrow. It would just add an extra $200 onto the project. What do you mean? You can't do it? Well, oh, no, that wasn't in our original scope. So, we'll have to actually do that. So it's going to be $200 extra. Would you like us to would you like me to issue a change order? Would you like us to add this to the job? Would you like us to do this for you? Well, let me think about it, right? You got to be direct. A lot of you guys don't like conflict. This is the people pleaser. And you think that a customer asking you to do something and you really don't want to do it, right? You, in your mind, this is a psychological problem. In your mind, you think by saying no or by saying it's going to cost money, that what you're actually doing is disappointing them, and you're going to cause an enormous amount of conflict, and they're going to be really upset with you. And so instead of doing the right thing, what you should do, what you need to do for your own sanity and for your own financial well-being, is you just under your breath say, oh man, I don't really have time to do this. And, this just pisses me off, but I'm going to do it anyways. Yeah, Alice, we can do it for you. No problem. Right? I know you guys listening to this have done this. I know you have, because I've done the same thing. You're shaking your head right now because you've done this. You can't do this. Now, let me add a disclaimer here. In my business, we always looked for little opportunities to provide value without the customer even knowing it. One of the most common things that we would do on a lot of homes, and you guys know this if you work inside homes, a lot of times doors don't open, close properly, right? Either the hinges are off, the doors, warped, or the strikes aren't aligned, whatever. The doors don't open or close properly, right? The deadbolt won't turn and lock because it's hitting the strike plate. What we always did is anytime we're working on a home, especially if it's in like if we're working in a bathroom and we got to go in and out the front door every single day and the door doesn't close, sometimes you're carrying stuff and you kind of pull the door shut and it doesn't close unless you grab it and like pull the handle really hard to lock it. Well, that creates kind of an inconvenience for us. So we'll just fix it. We'll just, spend 10, 15 minutes and fix the door so it operates normal. And we don't even tell the client that we did it. A lot of times, 3 to 4 or 5 days later, they go, did you guys fix the door? They're like, oh, yeah, we did that last week. Wow, thank you so much. It's just a little value add. So I would build into my estimate. I mean, we're only talking like 10, 15 minutes. I'm not building in 5 hours of work, right? We build into the estimate of like opportunities to provide value like that. It can be as simple as pulling their trash cans from the road back up to the house after the trash guy comes by. There's lots of ways you can look for opportunities. That's a whole different podcast. But the other thing is like, back to what I was saying about the scope. I knew, after several projects, I pretty much know with about 80 to 90% certainty that when we demo an old bathroom, the floor under the toilet is going to have some damage. It just is. There's always going to be, OSB, or if it's, for whatever reason it's plywood, there's always going to be some wood rot or damage around the toilet and the toilet flange. And almost inevitably, it turns into a change order. Oh, we didn't know that was there. Customer, it's going to be $300 to fix this, right? So what I started doing is with the things that we know have a high probability of happening, I just built it into my estimate. I just add an extra hour or two in labor for, the plumber or for when we're doing framing or whatever. I just build it in so that whenever we remove the flooring, sure enough, there's a rotten toilet, and we had extra scrap pieces of OSB, different thicknesses on the trailer. It's already covered. The cost, one sheet of plywood or OSB and an hour of labor, and you're covered. And we're only talking like, $100, $150, $200, whatever, but we're covered. And I don't have to go back to the customer and say, well, customer, I got a change order. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to change order your customers to death. This is actually a strategy used by terrible and cheap and crooked contractors, is to low bid a job and then beat them to death on change orders. If you're unethical and you're a used car salesman and that's what you want to do, that's fine. But, we're talking about ethical professional businesses here, right? Just build that into your costs. And guess what? If you have, $1,000 built into your cost for unforeseens, and for whatever reason, you have the unicorn project and everything goes absolutely perfect on this job. I mean, perfect. You could not ask for a better job. And you walk away with like a 70% gross profit as opposed to like a 50% because you just had so much amazing stuff. If you feel compelled that you got too much money out of them, you can always give your clients money back. Like, there's no law or rule that says you can't come to your client and say, hey, guess what? I know we estimated this at $40,000, but everything went absolutely perfect, so we're only going to charge you $38,000. You think they're going to be pissed off at you? No, Brad, you said $40,000. We want to pay you the extra too. If you feel so inclined to do that. Now, what I would recommend doing, if that's me, and I feel like I walked away with an extra $3,000 or $4,000 that I didn't deserve, and it was weighing on me, I would donate that money to charity. That's just me. I'm not saying you have to do that. Just saying, like, I would much rather give money to charity if I felt so inclined. You've heard me say before, don't run your business like a charity, run it so you can be charitable. This is an example of when you can do that, right? So you have to, if you build that into your scope, you don't have to go to your client every other day. Oh, Mary, guess what? Another change order. Yeah, this one's only going to be $300. And the next day, hey, guess what? We got another change order. This one's actually going to be $1,000 though. Next day, oh, Mary, guess what? We got another change order. And you're like, holy crap, dude. Like, did you not estimate this correctly? Like, what's going on here? Are you just taking advantage of me? Right? Try to prevent that by, padding your estimate a tiny bit to cover unforeseens, or the ones that you know are going to happen a majority of the time. Just automatically put that into your estimate, right? Make sure you have a detailed scope of work to prevent any unknowns and any misconceptions about what they're getting. Set the expectation from the get-go, right? Charge appropriately. By the way, if you charge what you're supposed to charge, what I tell you to charge, a lot of times you can cover some of those unknowns, those little $200, $300, $400 unknowns, and you're still walking away with a lot of money, and you're doing just fine, even if you don't include that in your estimate, right? There's plenty of times where I was making really good money on a job, and I just felt, you know what, we'll take care of that 30-minute job, no problem. Don't even worry about it, right? You can do that when you're charging appropriately. When you're not charging appropriately, you're counting every penny that's coming out of your pocket, right? So do these things, and I promise you, your scope creep problem will disappear. If you do what I just told you, 90% of your scope creep problems will disappear. And the last thing I'll say is you have to make sure your team is on the same page. You can't be saying, we're going to charge you for a change order, and then your client, your lead guy who has a people-pleasing problem is undermining what you're saying, and he's staying longer and doing stuff for them and not telling you because he feels like that's what you should do. That's a personnel problem you got to deal with. Right? So just make sure if you do what I said, you won't have any more scope creep problems. So guys, thanks for hanging out with me. This is a really good topic and I haven't covered before, but it's something that definitely happens to a lot of us, and it can cause us, tens of thousands of dollars a year in lost revenue. So do this, implement it, and you will have some great success. Thanks for hanging out with me. You know where to find me. Just search for the Hammer and Grind Podcast. Remember, until next time, profit is not a dirty word.